is an interesting concept. Everything we do is somehow related to it, whether it be in terms of clock time or as a way of expressing our place in our journey of life. Being in time for the dentist, of course, really means being ahead, whereas being in time with a marching band means being in sync. The time I want to talk about is about how we perceive it. Someone might accuse you of not playing in time to mean you are somehow deficient, but the weird thing is that while there are times when it makes sense to be robotically metronomic, there are times when to do so would destroy the fantastic or the free character of the piece one is playing. Sometimes being in time is about being with other people, whatever the actual pulse is. Thomas Aquinas explained the difference between time and eternity. The apprehension of time is caused by the perception of the changing instant, the apprehension of eternity by that of the enduring instant. We notice time because somehow things happen in it. Most pieces of music have a pulse, but what makes a piece of music move is its rate of harmonic change. A held chord under a violinist's frantic scales might seem frenetic, but without moving harmony, it is not really progressing. Rather like pressing the accelerator with no gears engaged in a car, so that while the engine is revving, the wheels have no instruction to move. And it's also a relative matter. A quick pace of harmony will feel more alive and alert if it follows a period of repose where the harmonies move slowly. The opening few minutes of Wagner's Ring is one long chord, which is played with and expanded over several minutes. In a sense, very little happens. He is perhaps acting out the second notion of Aquinas' phrase where a suspended instant lasts such a long time that it opens out visions of deep history, and with that a sense of the eternal. In music making, time is also surprisingly fluid. We might all know what a metronome is, and often composers put a number in onto the pulse. It's perhaps no surprise that some of these composers don't stick to the given marking, for while the number does have a value, it's also the case that things like the venue, the forces and the occasion all contribute to how this number is enacted. So that what we might call the scriptural text is somewhat more open than the page might want to admit. Then there's the fact that shaping a melody in the context of its harmonies and its dynamics means that one might take time to make it more meaningful. A few bars into a famous impromptu by Schubert, he marks it to be played very softly, and every single pianist ever allows a moment for the drop in dynamic to work. While Schubert hasn't written anything to say that, tradition, reason and scripture work together. I can show this by playing it first without any shift in time and then with. And the other one. Last week I talked about text and how we have to be responsible enough to take it seriously, and yet responsive enough to know what that entails. It's perhaps a good moment to point out the paper version of a Viennese waltz is extremely different from the noise that emerges. A Viennese waltz on paper is written in 3/time, and yet the normal disposition of 3 equally distant beats, that doesn't really apply. In a Viennese waltz, the opening 2 beats are sort of crushed together. Our accurate Western notation is found wanting, but to accurately depict the required rhythm with standard notation would look inordinately complex. So the paper rhythm says this. But actually in practice it's more like this. And it's not just a Viennese problem. There are thousands of pop songs over the last 100 years which in print appear with equal quaver note values when the desired sound is far freer. All religious experience takes place in time. A revelation, for example, reveals a former time when it was not revealed. And music too needs time in which to function. One quick chord is hard to decode as music, but once one hears more, then the unearthing and unfolding of stories can begin. But time is something we also deploy. For instance, in the Schubert song, the exquisite use of timing can point out a particular relevant emotion. Even without any poetic text, musicians can show something behind the printed music by delaying a change of harmony, so that the switch of sound world becomes magical rather than prosaic. The question, of course, arises, what do musicians do in the time that they have allotted? They mostly deal with convincingly presenting melodies and harmonies, and to do this well, they generally have to be in tune.